In any democracy, the real action, the place where things actually happen, is in the halls of debate, in Congress, in your local city council. This is where ideas are supposed to clash and where laws get made. But what happens if someone tries to shut that whole debate down before it even has a chance to start? Well, today we're unpacking the specific laws that are designed to protect the very heart of that debate, the laws that are all about safeguarding popular representation itself.
Okay, so let's think about democracy for a second. It's kind of like a high stakes competition, right? A contest of ideas, policies, and different visions for the future, all played out by the people we elect to represent us. But just like any serious game, it completely falls apart if there aren't any rules. And I'm not talking about the rules for winning or losing a debate. I mean the fundamental rules that guarantee the game can even be played in the first place, fairly and freely. So the real question is, what are these foundational rules that protect the entire playing field? All right, let's talk about the rules of the arena. The absolute best way to picture this is to imagine our legislative bodies, Congress, the Senate, even your city council, as a kind of protected arena. And this isn't just any building. It's the designated, almost sacred space where our representatives go to bat for us. The laws we're about to dive into are basically the security guards for this arena, making sure the gates are open and the contest of ideas can always happen. And the law is incredibly specific about this. It's not vague at all. It lays out three core rules, three distinct crimes that are all about safeguarding this entire process. These rules make sure the arena can't be locked from the outside, that the game can't be thrown into chaos from the inside, and maybe most importantly, that the players themselves can't be bullied or intimidated. So let's start with the most basic rule of all, making sure the gates to the arena are always open. Okay, crime number one, locking the gates. This gets right to the heart of Article 143, which is all about preventing a meeting from ever even starting. And our arena metaphor works perfectly here. Just imagine showing up to the championship game, you're all hyped up, but the stadium gates are chained shut. No one can get in, no game can happen. That is exactly what this law is designed to prevent. So what is Article 143, really? Well, in the simplest terms, its entire job is to guarantee that the government can physically get together to do its work. The law makes it crystal clear. You cannot use force or you cannot use fraud to stop Congress or any legislative body from meeting. This is the absolute bedrock. I mean, think about it. If your representatives can't even get into the same room, how can they represent you? It's impossible. And the law gets that. It sees this not just as a minor disturbance, but as a direct attack on the function of the state. And here's where it gets really interesting, because the law is smart about this. It's not just talking about brute force. Of course, you've got force. That's the obvious one. You form a human barricade, you physically block the doors to Congress. Pretty straightforward. But the law also covers fraud. And this is the sneakier, more clever approach. This could be something like sending a very convincing but totally fake email from the speaker's office that says, hey, meeting's canceled. Or maybe pulling a fire alarm right before a big vote to force everyone to evacuate. See? Both methods do the same thing. They lock the gates and stop the game before it starts. And yeah, the consequences are serious. This is not a slap on the wrist. If you're found guilty of this, you could face up to 6 years in prison, plus a pretty hefty fine. And that penalty really tells you something about how grave this offense is. When you stop a legislative body from meeting, you're not just blocking a few people from getting into a building. You're silencing the voices of the millions of people they represent. You're basically hitting the pause button on a whole branch of government. Okay, so Article 143 makes sure the arena gates are open and the players can get on the field. The game is on. But what happens if someone tries to cause chaos during the proceedings? Well, that brings us to our second major crime, disrupting the game. Now, the focus shifts from what's happening outside the arena to chaos breaking out right there on the field. This is Article 144, and I like to call it the heckler's rule. Its whole purpose is to make sure that once a meeting actually starts, it can move forward in an orderly way. Now, this isn't about stopping passionate debate. That's what democracy is. This is about preventing behavior that's so disruptive or disrespectful that the assembly just can't function anymore. The goal here is to protect the integrity of the process so that, real work can actually get done. So what actually counts as a disruption? Well, it could be somebody shouting from the gallery over and over again, trying to drown out a speaker, or it could be behavior that just fundamentally disrespects the authority of the whole session. But the key word here is willfully. The action has to be a deliberate attempt to disturb the assembly. And this is a really important distinction, right? It separates legitimate protest from illegal disruption. The law is there to protect the space for debate, not to protect someone's right to shut down that debate with pure chaos. Now, the penalty for disrupting the game is lighter than for locking the gates. We're talking up to 6 months in prison. And that makes sense, doesn't it? The meeting wasn't totally stopped, but its work was still seriously messed up. The law recognizes that while it's not as bad as preventing the meeting altogether, interrupting the work of the people's representatives is still a serious offense that harms the whole democratic process. All right, on to our third and final rule. And this one gets personal. We've protected the arena, and we've protected the game itself. Now we have to talk about protecting the players, the individual representatives. And this is all covered by Article 145, which deals with something called parliamentary immunity. Just let that sink in for a second. A representative cannot speak for the people if they are afraid to speak at all. I mean, that's everything, isn't it? The whole system depends on this one simple idea that our elected officials can stand up, speak their minds, and vote their conscience without being afraid. If they can be threatened or intimidated just for doing their job, then their voice, which is really your voice, is silenced. So, what is this parliamentary immunity? The best way to think of it is as a protective shield, like a force field. Article 145 gives this shield to members of Congress while they're doing their jobs. It makes sure they can't be pressured with threats, and it protects them from politically motivated arrests that could be timed perfectly to stop them from making a crucial vote. It's a fundamental guardrail for their independence. So, how can someone break this shield? Well, the law points to two big ways. First, there's coercion. That's the classic strong-arm tactic, using force, threats, or even fraud to stop a representative from doing their duty, whether it's voting or just speaking up. The second is unlawful arrest, and this one is seriously chilling when you think about it. It prevents a scenario where an opponent gets arrested on some bogus charge right before a big vote, just to get them off the board. It's an abuse of power, plain and simple. But, and this is a huge but, this shield is not bulletproof. Let's be really clear. It is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. This immunity is for their function as a legislator. It does not protect them if they commit a serious crime. The law sets a really high bar here. If a member commits a crime that's punishable by more than 12 years in prison, that shield is gone. They can be arrested, even if Congress is in session. This makes sure that immunity is there to protect democracy, not to protect criminals. And whoa, okay, just look at these penalties. Trying to coerce a legislator's vote or speech could land you in prison for up to 12 years. That's even more severe than locking the gates of Congress in the first place. That tells you everything you need to know about how vital the law considers the independent thought and action of our representatives. Intimidating a player is basically seen as one of the most dangerous ways you can rig the entire game of democracy. So, let's zoom out. We've looked at these three pretty distinct crimes. Now, let's tie it all together. Why does the law go to such great lengths to do all this? Well, it's because these rules aren't just little technicalities. They're the very foundation that popular representation is built on. It's all about making sure the game can always go on.
When you boil it all down, these laws give us a trifecta of protection. They guarantee that the government can always meet. They make sure that when they do meet, things are orderly and productive. And maybe most importantly, they allow our representatives to speak and act for us without having to look over their shoulder in fear. Altogether, these three things uphold the independence and the integrity of our legislative bodies. And this brings us to what might be the single most important takeaway from all of this. These laws, Articles 143, 144, and 145, they aren't really rules for politicians. At their core, they're safeguards for your voice. When these laws aren't forced, it means the person you voted for can actually get in the building, have a real debate, and cast a vote for you without being afraid. They protect your direct link to the government. So, we've seen how the law protects the arena, how it protects the game, and how it protects the players. It builds the space where democracy can actually work. But that leaves us with one final and maybe deeper question. These laws can make sure the game gets played, but they can't make sure it's played well or honestly. They protect the process, but who protects the integrity of the game itself? Now that is something worth thinking about.